Perfect. All right. So welcome back, everyone. I am Becky B, the Book Dragon, and I have with me again my wonderful guest, this time live. We have Nelson Aspen. So welcome again.
Oh, it's great to be back with you. How you doing?
Doing doing well, keeping busy myself. But I'm so pleased to discuss Mr. and the magnificent Mr. and Mrs. Maple. And I do
Yeah,
have some.
you've got the reading copy. I've got the actual physical copy, and it's always such a nail biter to see what the finished product is going to look like, and I'm delighted with the result.
That's good. And I was actually going to ask you because when I printed it, just how many pages is it in the actual book copy?
51. This is
51.
this is
Okay.
not a short little book that the kids read before bed. This takes a few nights. It's something to look forward to at bedtime.
Okay. I was just going to ask you because I know that most children's books are at least like between like 28 to maybe 36 at most. So what was like as you were writing it, like when you discovered how many pages there were, what was like the actual aim for the age group?
Well, it's funny because Amazon, for some, I don't understand how the analytics work.
Hmm.
The publisher had the age listed from 4 to 17, which is like I'm not quite sure that that's what I would have thought. It wasn't the way I was writing it. I was writing it as an adult telling a story to a child. It wasn't necessarily for a child to read themselves. It was more of a story that someone like myself would tell to a
Okay.
child. However, you'll notice that the foreword to the book was written by Carrie Bernight. And Carrie is a very well-known New York Times best-selling gerontologist. And her specialty is the elderly. And I'm a big elderly lover myself. And now I realize the book's theme is about accepting change, physical change. Not all families can live under the same roof. And I was
Hmm.
thinking when I was writing it, I was talking to children about sometimes a parent or a sibling lives outside of the home. But I began to think about the elderly. And it's something a lot of old folks, my parents included, had to contend with, moving away from home. So now I say the age range for the book is 4 to 104. And I'm going to be doing some readings at nursing homes and assisted living facilities, which to me is, that is really my most cherished audience. I grew up singing in nursing homes, visiting. I really, I don't know, I really blossom when I'm around older folks.
That would be a really wonderful gift for them. And I was just going to say, for those that are not aware, can you explain what a gerontologist is?
A gerontologist studies the elderly, and she's a doctor of gerontology, and she's wonderful. She has a book called Joy Span, which, even though her mother is 97 and enjoying a long lifespan, as did my parents, it's about putting joy into your life. We worry so much in today's world about how long we're going to live and being healthy about how we're going to live, which is of course important. But if you're not experiencing joy in those years, you're really missing out on life. So her philosophy is that joy and finding joy in your life is just as important as good health, and the number of years is less of a concern than the joy in those years.
Okay. And I was just going to ask you when it came to Joyce Span, that reminds me very much of, I'm not sure if you've heard of her, Marie Kondo.
Mm-mm.
She wrote this book called Spark, believe it's called Spark Joy. And there's another one of hers. She's like a Japanese ultimate cleaning organizer. And she wrote this book called Spark Joy. She has you go through your things. It's like for people that live like in a cluttered home and everything is sort of like in disarray. And she's like, lift up the item, feel it, hold it, breathe it in, and it's like, does it still spark joy for you? If it does, hold on to it. If it doesn't, it's like, thank you for your time, moving it on to someone else. So I'm not sure if that was something that.
Wasn't that a movie with Joy? I think there was a movie called Joy about a true story about the woman who became famous on
Yeah, but this is not the
QVC or
same one.
something. Yeah, no, but it's Joy, and my mother's name was Joyce Ann. So the first
Okay,
time I heard of Joyce Span, I thought of my own mother. So I don't know. The older I get, the more connected all these little conversations and things. There are no accidents anymore. Everything's connected.
that's true. And as I was reading it, I'm like about halfway through, and I was like, you know what? Did you take inspiration from your Japanese maples from your home, where you are right now
Oh,
currently?
the entire book is based on the actual. I'm looking at Mrs. Maple right now outside my window, and we all. I don't know. There's something about having all this outdoor space in the urban jungle of New York City. I mean,
Hmm.
it is such a luxury and privilege and responsibility to have a garden in
Yes.
Manhattan. It's crazy, and especially I love my maple trees. And I grew up with maple trees. I grew up in the farmland of Pennsylvania. So I wanted to
Okay.
have a little bit of farmland of Pennsylvania in Manhattan. So the first order of business was getting a delicate, beautiful maple tree, who I named Mrs. Maple. And I loved her so much that when I acquired a rooftop space, I wanted another Japanese maple. And so I got a Mr. Maple, and Mr. Maple he's shaped like this, and Mrs.
Right.
Maple's very delicate. And they inspired me to do the story. So the characters of the juniper bush and the boxwood bush, the pigeon, the spider, they're all based on the critters, the flora and fauna that I
Hmm.
enjoy every day.
That's cool. And I noticed when I was reading it, and these are actual selections of maple trees. One is called a blood good. What makes that one different from Mr. Maple, which is a Ben, what's the name again? Ben
Well,
Combat.
I call him Benny for short, but yeah, thankfully Google's a wonderful tool when researching Japanese maples. I don't know that I think both of my Japanese maples are blood goods, but once you start going down the rabbit hole of horticulture,
Yeah,
not surprisingly, there are many varieties of maple tree. Mine just happened to be blood good, but for the sake of the story, I made one of each.
and I was just curious why. And when I was reading it at the towards like the very, very end, the man decides to put Mr. Ben Komachi or Mr. Maple under the is it a pagoda? No, that's the
He's in a cabana. He's not,
cabana.
yeah.
Why is there like a specific reason why that tree needs to be placed in a cabana versus Mrs. Maple, which still remains on the terrace?
Well, it's just actually what really happened. The terrace is a small space. The cabana on the rooftop is a much larger space. So
Mm,
I kept the smaller tree, Mrs. Maple, on my terrace, and I kept the larger tree. He's up above me right now on the roof.
cool. And I was going to ask you, did you do a bunch of research like when it came to trees? Because I remember reading Brian Selznick's Big Tree. I'm not sure if you've heard of that one.
Mm-mm.
That was like the last book he wrote a couple of years ago, but he was saying how trees communicate through the roots. And I was just as I was reading it, I'm like, you know what? I'm wondering if that's how Mr. and Mrs. Maple are communicating is through some sort of some kind of communication because I saw the heart that connected the two of them together
Yes.
in that space. And even though they're far away, they have Joro, they have a nosy busy bee or something, and that they're connecting and passing along the messages. So I was just wondering if you did some research on the trees before you did that.
No, in my magical world, they just speak to each other. All the characters just freely speak to each other. I don't know, telekinetically, perhaps,
Right.
but it's reflected as dialogue in the book, and I have no doubt that they can communicate. And it's funny because the boxwood, just by virtue of the name Boxwood, he's rather grumpy, and
Right.
and it's funny because in reality the boxwood is the lowest maintenance of all. It really
Really.
requires no attention other than water.
That's cool. And who did the I'm looking at the thing here. Who did the illustrations for the
Oh,
book?
Nicole Tejada. They are I'm just so in love. I can send you some images if you want to add them to the finished chat that we have, if you like. But it's interesting because this young woman was assigned the task of illustrating from the editor, and the editor put me in touch with her. She's very young, just out of school, and I invited her over and we took photographs together of all the assembled gardening and even the side of my building. There's an illustration, and the man
Right.
who has the garden, and Franz is based on my landscaper, Franz. It's a true story. So she illustrated all of this, and it's interesting because she did it using a computer. It was all illustrated with her technological skills, but she used the images from real life, but then interpreted them. And it was a very collaborative process. It really amazed me because, in my mind, I wanted watercolors or pen and ink, kind of thing. And she, with her computer skills, created these magnificent images. And it was a very creative and collaborative process. She would send them to me. I said, oh, the pigeon should always have a feather flying, a light motif of the feather flying, or I don't know. It was a real revelation to me that we could work that way, and that art has evolved, and that there are
Yeah.
many ways to paint a picture.
But yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. If she did the watercolors, but then you're telling me that she did it all by computer.
She did.
Um, how long, by the time that you wrote, I mean, how long did it take for you to write the story? And then how long did it take between the two of you to collaborate to finally get the finished piece?
Well, this is my first children's book, but my 12th book. So, as you know, I crank them out. I'm very prolific. I confess to having a short attention span. So, I really charge forward. And when we did Kindred Spirits, the Titanic tale, that was difficult because my editor, we made me. I mean, he really did have to force me into doing a lot of rewrites. It led me out of my comfort zone of where I originally saw the story. But with Mr. and Mrs. Maple, I just started telling the story. I just charged forward. It's not, as we said, it's not a short story. It's
Right.
something that you would read over the course of a few nights, perhaps. I remember, I grew up on The House at Pooh Corner and all the A. A. Milne and even L. Frank Baum and the Wizard of Oz stories. They're
Yes.
long. Alice in Wonderland is long. These are not little 10-minute Dr. Seuss books. So that inspired me. So I wanted to just tell the story in its entirety. And as I got going, it probably took me a couple of weeks, and then polishing. And I worked with a lovely editor to make sure it was cohesive. But now, and once it's over, you get so excited to get through it and get it over, and you want to get it published and you want your hands on it. I'm very impatient when it comes to that. However, now that it's over, I'm like, oh, I wish I could do more. Maybe they'll have a sapling and I have to do a sequel.
Right. I love the fact that you have the animals, the communicators. You have Sally the spider, Nosy the bee, Joro the pigeon, and I feel like I'm forgetting somebody.
No, then you've got Juniper and Boxwood, the man,
Juniper
and
Boxwood, yeah.
Franz.
Yeah, got that
But
one.
it's funny. Yeah, I'll tell you about Joro the pigeon. Everybody likes Joro the pigeon,
Yeah.
and if a pigeon ever comes near the terrace, I shoo them immediately away. I don't like what pigeons leave behind. But my husband is terrified of pigeons, and
Oh.
my nickname for him is Joro. His name is
Oh,
John, but I call him Joro. And he is so terrified of pigeons. We have traveled the world, and everywhere we go, from San Francisco to Sydney Harbor, if there's a bird on the street, we have to cross to the other side of the street. He's a grown man, but he has this fear of birds instilled on
right.
him by his big brother. So we know who to blame. However, I decided I had to put in a pigeon and name it for him to try and help him therapeutically get over his
I
fear
was
of
just
pigeons.
gonna I was just gonna say if you guys had ever gone to Venice,
Uh,
there's a Saint Mark's Square. The
he would
pigeons
have
are gathering for the popes.
he would
Okay.
have a stroke. Fact that he would just fall down, and that would be the end of him. And Sally the spider, um, named for my friend's mother. Her mother is 102, and I
Oh my
told you how
God.
much I love old folks, and I'll be going to her assisted living place to read the book to the residents there. But Sally is 102, so I decided I wanted this sweet, feisty spider to be named for Sally, and I do like alliteration. And then the bee, he's a busybody. He's a buzzing busybody bee. So I named him Nosy because he's nosy. And then we've got Juniper and Boxwood. Juniper's very sweet. Boxwood's a little grumpy, which is ironic because in real life, as plants, they're the kind of the other way around. Junipers will scratch you. They're hard to prune, whereas Boxwoods are just easygoing.
That's cool. That's cool. So with
I'm
that,
noticing your background too. I'm loving the tree art in your background as
oh,
well.
thank you. This was a feat in itself. These are basically how many? One, two, three, four, five. There's six. Is that there? Yeah, there's six. There's six canvases all merged together, and then you see like the hinges in between.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
they were
so
wood. They look like wooden panels to me that you'd painted. Interesting.
yeah, I wanted to have like like a book stained glass background, and I was using a bunch of these different paints. And this was a lesson learned because when these guys have to close, the problem was I used a very thick, I think it was a fabric paint, and you see like here, like there's like the black paints that are supposed to, I guess it like represents the framing, like when it comes to the stained glass window when they like merge together with like soldering or something.
It's perfect.
But when I did the interior and I closed it, suddenly it's like I can't get it open. So it sort of became like a really sticky situation. So that was funny. I love the illustration. These were all done by the computer. Do you know
Correct.
which do you know what program she used?
I don't know, but she's a little miracle worker for sure, and it makes me reflect on all the artwork and the cover work of my previous books, and how laborious it all was. And I don't know. I guess that makes me sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but I really was struck at the swiftness and
Yeah.
beauty and ease. For her it was easy. I struggle to operate any kind of technology. I missed my old electric typewriter. That was about as advanced as I wanted to get. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a modern miracle.
I was just gonna say because the illustrations, they remind me very much of the illustrator who did A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh books.
Oh,
It's
that to me is the standard to meet. It's just that work. It's so vivid in my mind, and I remember even as a kid being a little disappointed in the Disney animation of Winnie the Pooh because I
mm,
so preferred the
the original.
storybook Winnie the Pooh. Same thing with Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, did you, as you were writing the story, did you ever try maybe sketching some of the drawings as like a pre-concept?
Well, yes, very, very rough sketching. I do that with, I've done that with all my book covers in my mind. I can see it. I just can't execute it as well as a professional artist. But yeah, I mean, I have it in here. It's just, it doesn't come out of here.
Right, right. And I have that thing too. I can't sometimes I switch back and forth. I think I told you I had surgery a few years ago,
Yes.
and it not only affected my voice, but it also uh I can't write like I used to. So sometimes I have to use the ring pen, and other times I'll just be writing, and then I'm starting to notice again I'm making those little curly cues. So it sucks. I
Oh,
miss I miss being able to draw. I miss being able to color properly without my hand, you know, going completely numb or just stopping altogether after like 5 minutes. It
yeah,
sucks.
I computers have greatly diminished my penmanship. Now when I pick up a pen, and I'm an avid letter and card writer sender, and I
Mhm.
notice and if I'm signing books even just to write a little, message in a book for someone, I'm appalled by my penmanship half the time. And I used to have exquisite penmanship. That was I'm old enough that was taught in school. We learned penmanship. I'm sure that's not taught today. And it was a source of pride, but computers have totally robbed me of
Yeah.
penmanship. And even, you mentioned drawing. One of my many survival jobs when I was a young actor was I was a caricature artist, and I would be hired for children's parties to
Ah,
draw caricatures at children's parties. But I wouldn't be able to do that now. You need to exercise that like any muscle, and I've lost that skill.
what? Besides this particular book, I was reading, lastly, kind of going off tangent here, but Kindred Spirits. Little
Got
Bird
it right
told me,
here.
yeah,
I got my stack next to me.
little Bird told me that that is now being turned into a feature film. Am I correct?
Well, Kindred Spirits, a Titanic tale, which we discussed the last time I was on with you. Yes, it is being adapted into a screenplay by a gentleman named Jude Prest, who has quite a pedigree of his own. He is an award-winning screenwriter and filmmaker, and he read my book. He discovered my book, which I was very flattered by, and he had actually been hired by Netflix to produce a series on the Titan submersible that
Oh,
ultimately imploded on its final voyage down to the Titanic wreck. And he had been on 3 dives on that Titan submersible. And when after the implosion, tragically, which killed the 5 people on board, uh,
right,
and he had spent weeks with Stockton Rush, uh, working on this series,
oh
doing
my
tons
gosh,
of interviews with them. And so what they did is they ultimately made a documentary for Netflix, Titan, the OceanGate disaster. Fantastic documentary, huge hit for Netflix. And Jude was an executive producer on that, of course. And I believe a director. And he also worked on Jeff Corwin's Ocean Mysteries series. So he
oh yeah,
knows,
I've heard of that one.
yeah, he knows a lot when it comes to the ocean. So the fact that he read my book, Kindred Spirits, and said, I want to make this into a film. So he's adapting it. And I was like, have at it. I'm not territorial about my prop, like it's safe, it's copyrighted, I've got my name on the cover, it's my book. But I didn't feel uh, like I had to write the screenplay. I was more than happy to entrust it to his more than capable hands. So he's working on that as we speak, and fingers crossed, something will happen with that. And it's funny because the final installment in my trilogy of the Dancing Between the Raindrops books, now all 3 are out,
Mhm.
and the final one is Dancing Between the Raindrops Happily Ever After. And these are the ones that I feel should be a series. This would be like a heated rivalry meets Sex in the City. It spans 50 years of my very exciting, star-studded life. And
Cool.
so there's all sorts of things. I feel like the children's book, I wanted to do that. That was a selfish desire on my part, wanting to do the children's book. To prove that I could write a children's book. My editor said, "You've written some pretty adult stuff. Do you want to use a pen name when you're doing the children's book?" I said, "Absolutely not. I want people to know that I can do different kinds of genres. I just don't mix them up. Don't let the kids read Dancing Between the Raindrops.
Right.
Leave them with Mr. and Mrs. Maple." But now that's 12 books. I want to say it's like I ran 20 marathons, and then I said, that's
Jeez.
it. I've got nothing more to prove. 20 was my limit for marathons. I think 12 is my limit for books. Now I can develop them, films, TV, coloring books, whatever. I think I'd
Right.
like to stop and smell the roses or the
Right.
maples.
So speaking of Titan and Titanic and all that, when press went to you to discuss the adapted screenplay, what are some of like the legal stuff that you guys had to discuss? Did it have to come from the publishers, from you,
Yes,
from the copyright? So how does all that work for anyone who wants to, let's say they have read a book and that they want to adopt like adapt that into a screenplay, which will then hopefully be picked up by a production company. What are like the steps that they should know so that
I
they
would.
don't make a
Yeah,
mistake?
I would say every case is different. Some involve money, some don't. But you certainly need legal contracts. You must protect yourself.
And
As the author must protect themselves, so must the producers or the adapters or what all parties involved. I'm fortunate to be married to a very smart lawyer who helps
mm,
me with contracts and things like that. So that saves me on having to hire an attorney. I've got one at home, and it was between the writer, in this case Jude, and the publishers and myself. So we all signed an agreement together, and here we go. We'll see what happens when the script is finished. And Jude is certainly in a position to get it shopped around, and we'll see what happens.
that's cool. That's cool. And then for Titanic by itself, since you're in New York City, have you seen or have been part of Titanique?
Oh, yes. I saw it when it was off Broadway. It has moved to Broadway now.
Oh,
And
nice.
actually, my podcast, which is called Titanic Talk, that I
Right.
co-host with Alexandra Boyd, we had Ty Blue, Tye, Ty Blue, who's the creator of Titanique. So if you want to hear an interview with him about the origins of Titanique, we did a Titanic Talk podcast with Ty and an actress from the musical as well. And now, it's, I have to say, when something sort of gets spoiled by its own success. Now, I haven't seen it on Broadway, but it's got big names. Jim Parsons is in it. Now it's a big,
Right.
huge production because it's gone to Broadway, and I'm sure they charge hundreds of dollars for a seat. I enjoyed it, I think, probably more than I would on Broadway. Seeing it off Broadway, small theater, enthusiastic crowd. They changed it every night. They were improvising things, and every performance was different, and that's why people gravitated toward it. And people would see it 50 or 60 times. It had a cult-like following because you never knew what was going to. It was always different. Every performance was different, and I don't know because I haven't seen it now that it's moved to Broadway, but I hope that success hasn't spoiled it. I hope it still has the same charm that it had off Broadway. The thing about Titanic is it's a spoof of the James Cameron film. It has really very little to do with the Titanic tragedy. It has everything to do with spoofing the James Cameron film with a Celine Dion soundtrack. It takes Celine Dion's music library and spoofs the James Cameron film. Now that's high concept and has absolutely nothing to do with history.
Right. And but speaking of spoofs, I'm not sure because I haven't seen any of the spoof musicals based off of like what is that, Spamalot or
Oh yeah.
Schmigadoon? Have you seen either of those in
Yeah, I
out
mean they're
there?
funny. I'm an old fogey. When I go to the theater, it's usually revivals of things. Like give me Camelot for musicals, give me Death of a Salesman for dramas. Give me The Man Who Came to Dinner for a comedy. I'm a classicist, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I love The Man Who Came to Dinner, but I have to say, between watching a live version of it with Nathan Lane and another one where I'm actually inside of the theater where they actually are producing it, my favorite is still the film version with Monty Woolley, Betty
Betty
Davis, and
Davis, yeah.
what's her name? And Sheridan. So
Oh, wasn't Billy Burke? Billy Burke was in it too, I
yes,
believe.
yes,
Yeah, better
yes,
known as Glinda the Good Witch,
yes, exactly.
who was married to Florence Ziegfeld. A lot
Oh,
of people
really?
don't know that Billy Burke was actually Mrs. Ziegfeld.
I didn't know that either. Although I
Her
think,
husband
although
was
I
the
think
big Broadway producer. Yeah.
I think my dad would know about that. So, Titanic, speaking of the Shades of Ireland tour, any news on the front there?
Well, yeah, I'm excited that we're going. Yeah, so in October, I will be joined by your lovely self and your dad and several others, and we're going off to Ireland for the Shades of Ireland tour that starts in Dublin and works its way around the Emerald Isle, culminating in Belfast, which, of course, for those in the know, Belfast was the birthplace of Titanic. And uh, after the glory days of shipbuilding in the early 20th century, Belfast really fell on hard times politically, and it was not a safe place to visit. It was downtrodden in many ways, and miraculously, things have turned around in all the best ways for Northern Ireland and Belfast in particular. It's such a beautiful, lovely place, and the Titanic Museum has really changed the whole city. It's now
Mm.
Titanic Land, but not in a tacky Disney way at all. It's very elegant. The Titanic Museum is probably, objectively speaking, in the top 10 tourist destinations in the world. It's that good, as you will see. And there's the Titanic Hotel, which
Mm.
used to be the offices of Harland and Wolff, the ship company that built Titanic and her sister ships. And they've renovated it and restored it to its original beauty and glory. And it's an unbelievably fantastic hotel and restaurant. There's the distillers, the nomadic ship, which used to take people, would ferry them out to the Titanic. If Titanic couldn't pull into the dock, which in a lot of cases it would have been too big to pull in, like in Ireland, in Queenstown, and in Cherbourg, France. So the
Right.
Titanic sat out in the harbor, and the nomadic would ferry people out to the ship. And what's interesting is the nomadic, you can see it, you can visit it in Belfast, and it survives. So it's as close to being on the Titanic, the original ship, as you can get, because it's of the same era and it's beautifully preserved. And there's so much to do, even non-Titanic oriented, in Belfast. And I've been 3 times, and I cannot wait to go back and to be with friends and be able to show folks around for the limited bit that I know the town, but just to share in the enthusiasm for being there.
So are you going to actually be the guide on the last day?
I'm going to
Or
be the cheerleader, is what I'm going to be. No, but nobody's forced to do anything. It's all other than getting from one destination to the next. It's very laid back. Everybody can sort of do as much or as little formally as they want. But certainly when it comes to Belfast, anybody that wants to come with me, come with me. I will be enthusiastically showing folks around.
that's cool. That's awesome. And speaking of which, I from our last conversation, who was from Kindred Spirits? Who was the one that you keep getting mixed up with, or who's the one that you keep seeing?
Milton
Milton, yeah,
Long.
okay.
Mil-
Is he still around?
Milton Long, the hero of Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale, is a deceased passenger from the Titanic. He died in the tragedy in 1912. And while I am not prone to believing in the paranormal, I certainly have an unhealthy obsession with Milton's life. And I don't know if it was a past life connection, but that's the theme of Kindred Spirits as well. And, he's very much a part of my life. And it's interesting because every day I'm meeting more and more Titanic enthusiasts. And in April was the anniversary. I did a speech to the British Titanic Society. I was invited to be a speaker on the Queen Mary 2 on a
Nice.
transatlantic voyage, retracing Titanic's route from Southampton to New York. And the closest we got to the wreck site was 45 nautical miles. And the captain was kind enough to have me to the bridge. I got to ring the noon bell on the Queen Mary 2. And then I led a commemoration when we were at the closest spot to the wreck site. And I went to the stern of the ship. And we had about a dozen passengers join me. And we had a moment of silence for those who lost their lives on Titanic.
Mm.
And it was very moving. So Milton is all around me, and I really did. There was such limited information available about Milton's life, and I was able to use my own research, intuition, and forensics to fill in the blanks of his life for Kindred Spirits. So I gave Milton, in my mind, the happy ending he didn't get in life, and I keep his memory alive. When someone passes away, usually in Jewish families, they'll say, "May so and so's memory be a blessing. May their
Yes.
memory be a blessing." And I think it's the loveliest expression. And I've adopted it for whenever someone is lost to us. And to me, Milton's memory is a blessing. And He lies in a tomb with his parents in Massachusetts. His body was recovered, and I write about it in the book. I'm sure his parents assumed Milton would get married, have children, and this plot in the graveyard was for 8 people. And there's only 3 in there, Milton and his
Mm,
parents. And it
wow.
speaks to the sadness of Milton's life. He had a short, I believe, sad life. So for all of his privilege, it was a sad life. So, and now I meet people. I was invited to an auction. Freeman's Auction House in New York had
I've heard of that.
for sale had John Jacob Astor IV's gold pocket watch that was recovered from his body when they found his body after the Titanic sunk. He was the most high-profile passenger on the ship. He was the richest man in the world, and all his money couldn't save him. He went down with the ship. They found his body, and on his body they got this pocket watch and a pencil case, a jeweled pencil case. And it was passed down for 114 years into his family until they sort of ran out of family. And the last surviving person to own these items, her estate auctioned them off. And I got to go to the auction house and see these items with the experts explaining their relevance. And it was a very fancy, lovely party. But to see those treasures, the personal items, you'll see when you go to the Titanic Museum, to see these very personal artifacts, relics, possessions,
Mm,
really drives home the human story of Titanic. And spoiler alert, those items, the 2 items, the pocket watch and the pencil case, fetched over $1.2 million. So people will pay, and they
wow.
just sold a life jacket. There was a life
Yes,
vest,
yes. I
and
just
that
I
went
just read
for
about
almost a
that.
million. That went for almost a million. So there's people. Yeah, I was just happy to be in the same room with them and get to see them. I don't need to own them and go broke
Right.
and
But
have
that's
nothing to, live on the street with my pocket watch. But it's really, you meet these people. And there I was at this fancy schmancy auction house. And most people that were there were Titanic enthusiasts or
mhm,
watch enthusiasts. They're horology. That was a new word I had learned. Horology is the study of watches.
mhm,
Like, I love vocabulary, so that
mm,
was the best thing to come out of the night for me. But they turned to me as a Titanic aficionado, and I ended up speaking there. So we Titaniacs just keep finding each other, and I introduce people to Milton all the time. They all know John Jacob Astor, but very few people knew Milton Long.
mm. But that's interesting though that the watch and I'm sorry, what was it? The
A
pencil
pencil
case?
case.
I was wondering why they wouldn't. I'm wondering why the Titanic Museum, what did they actually acquire those?
Well, they would acquire them if they wanted to pay for them, but I'm sure the estate. It was John Jacob Astor's. I think it was his grandson's second wife, who was the last owner of these things. And when she was gone, her estate put them up for auction. And I vividly remember as a kid, my dad was so excited for me to be interested in the Titanic that there was, I don't know if it was a life vest or a deck chair, it was something. There was some item that was coming up for sale from Titanic. And my dad wanted to get it for me. However, a museum was bidding on it, and you can't
Mm,
outbid a museum. A private person can rarely outbid a museum. You'd have to be Mr. Moneybags to outbid it.
right.
So my father said, "Sorry, son, you're not getting that item for your birthday." But I suspect that was the case. That there just wasn't no museum was willing to pony up the money that a private investor would have. Apparently, the pocket watch was purchased by an Irish businessman. That's
Ooh,
all we know about them. They've chosen to remain anonymous.
okay. And whatever happened with the vest? Do you know anything about the update on that one?
No, it came out in the news that it had sold for over $900,000, I believe. So I don't recall a name, but congratulations to him. I mean, where are you going to wear that?
But that is
Maybe
interesting
to the
though about
pool.
right. That is interesting though about the life jackets. Have you ever gone cruising?
Oh, Yeah. Are you talking about like, have I ever worn a life jacket?
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, I know that like for every cruise they will have like
The
the
drill.
emergency drills, but it's interesting because the when I was looking at that particular life jacket that came up, it seemed like it was still the same bulky, boxy ones that we have to wear, unless I'm wrong, and I'm just wondering if those have changed.
No, yeah, they have changed. Now, I mean, the Titanic life vests were made of cork. They were very heavy. And one of the fascinating, scary things about the uh, Titanic life vests is people who would have jumped from the ship because they were cork, they would have either immediately broken their jaws when they hit the water, or worse, the force of the cork coming up, they were not modern in any way, shape, or form. They kept you afloat, but that's not much good if you're unconscious with a broken jaw.
I did not even know that they were even made of cork. Jeez,
Yeah.
my goodness. Well,
Modern life vests would be, I'm sure, foam, some sort of buoyant foam,
yeah.
and not heavy enough to knock you out.
No, but I get, but again, it's just like I remember wearing those things as a kid. I'm like, how can I put my head above this huge, thick collar restriction? So, tell our viewers about where they can get the magnificent
The
Mr. and Mrs. Maple.
magnificent Mr. and Mrs. Maple. You can grab it on Amazon, and I think there's a Kindle version, but I highly recommend you get the hard copy because what I love is the font is nice and big. Whether
Mm.
so, if you're reading it with kids, they can. It's nice. It's laid out beautifully, and if you're an old person like me, that you don't need your reading glasses because the font is nice and big. And then, as we discussed, the artwork is so lovely that it will charm anyone. I think the artwork is so spectacular.
That's awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions for you unless you have some questions for me. But other than that, I am looking forward to seeing you in October.
We'll see each other in October. I just know we're going to be all the way around Ireland together. And yeah, that everybody should just visit me at nelsonaspen.com. Everything I'm doing, I'll be doing some very exciting book fairs this summer. So I'll have all that announced on my social media. And then Cunard Cruises have invited me back again in December. I'll be aboard the Queen Elizabeth this time. So I will have done
Ooh.
the Queen Anne, the Queen Mary too, and now I'll be doing the Queen Elizabeth in December. That only leaves one other one, the Queen Victoria. So I've almost done the whole
The whole
Cunard, the four queens. And I know there's a joke in there somewhere, but yes, I'm very excited. There's nothing like a Cunard cruise.
Actually, I did have one last question. So since yesterday was officially
Earth
Earth
Day.
Day, were you doing any speeches? Were you invited to do like any messages about Earth Day, what we should be looking for and what the book has to do to support Earth Day?
That's right. It's no accident that the book came out in April for Earth Day. That was the target goal. And over the weekend, I did a story time. The book, of course, is set in Harlem. I live in Harlem and I overlook the Apollo Theater. So you'll see in the book, Joe Rowe the Pigeon is overlooking the Apollo Theater. So I did. Franz, my landscaper, has a beautiful floral boutique in Harlem. So I did a neighborhood story time where I had some soap opera star friends of mine come and
Mhm.
do a reading for the kids, and we had snacks and juice, and we read the book in this beautiful floral place. So that was a celebration of Earth Day. And then for actual April 22nd, I had a happy hour book signing it has nothing to do with Earth other than the fact that it was Earth Day and it was a reason to celebrate. And it was very well attended. We had a lot of fun. And yeah, so now the book is officially out, and we're celebrating nature. The book is nature, and everybody,
Right.
even in New York City, sometimes you just need to get out there and touch some grass. And I can go out there and water the trees or trim something, and it's very therapeutic.
Can you give us a brief background of the theater?
Well, it's maybe not a coincidence that you said Victoria, because the Apollo has been around for 100 years. It's undergoing a renovation at the moment, its first renovation in 100 years.
Wow.
Uh, but next door, their property, they have a second theater called the Victoria Theater. So there's the famous Apollo marquee in red, and next door to it is Victoria in white. But the Apollo Theater, 100 years old, became best known as the home of the great African-American artists of the 20th century. It's where they all played, whether it was Duke Ellington or Ella Fitzgerald or any, I mean, you name them, to play the Apollo is the pinnacle of musical success in New York City. There's Carnegie Hall, there's the Apollo, and all the greats have played there. And in recent years, it became famous for its monthly amateur night, which they did a television version of it for a while, Amateur Night at the Apollo. And it's so much fun to go over there, and you go into this storied theater and these amateur acts, and some of them will blow you away. I mean, these are not amateurs in the sense, they may be unknown, but they are
Right.
certainly not amateurs. And the audience gets to decide who wins. You get a little card that is either yay or boo, and you cheer for the artist you like the best, and you boo the ones you want to get out.
Okay.
And they keep going on and on and on until they ascend to the grand prize. So if you come to New York City, you should definitely put a night at the Apollo on your list. And I had the great privilege of interviewing Chadwick Boseman on the stage of the Apollo Theater. Now that was something. He was it James Brown? He was playing James Brown in a film.
Oh my
And his
goodness.
co-star was Octavia Spencer. And
Oh, nice.
I interviewed Octavia in the audience house of the Apollo. And then I interviewed Chadwick on stage. And I believe, was it Dan Aykroyd was also in that film? Was it Dan Aykroyd? I think it was Dan Aykroyd.
And which
Was it
film was
Dan
this? This
Aykroyd?
was James Brown?
Yeah, was it? I have to Google it and find out what the name of that film was. But yeah, and then I think it was Dan Aykroyd. I interviewed him in the balcony of the Apollo Theater. So it was a great way to see up close all those things. Now you're just gonna have to bear with me a minute,
Sure,
because
sure, sure. That's fine.
I'm gonna need to Google that right now. It'll bother me. Of course, everybody thinks of him from Black Panther. Yes,
Right.
Get On Up, 2014. The
Okay.
music
Get
was
on
Get
up. Got
On
it.
Up, and he played James Brown. Now I need to know if it was Dan. I want to confirm that it was Dan Aykroyd. Yep, it was Dan Aykroyd.
Okay.
I'm not as dumb as I
Memory.
look.
Memory serves us both. Nice. That's cool. All right. Well, Nelson, it was wonderful talking to you again today.
Thank
Happy
you.
Earth Day, and say hi to some more Japanese maples.
Oh yes, I'm so grateful. It was fun to talk to you, and I'll see you in October, if not sooner.
Awesome. All right. Have a good day, okay?
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye. Want to see more interviews? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.